Now we are in a confluence age whereby we are in a dilemma of performing or perish. Performing in the sense to restore our ecosystems and to stop the climate change. The climate change is having a great effects on human and other habitats. So habitat is a place where every animal has a place to live, and wherein it finds the food, water, shelter it needs to live in. So the humans are one of the animal, they feel they are the cleverest animal and which is the most dangerous animal on the earth, which is destroying the ecosystem. So basically the habitats are two types. One is the terrestrial, that is land habitats, and the aquatic, that is water habitats. The total earth system, the global ecosystem is divided into two. So grasslands, forests, deserts, tundra, and mountains are all the land habitats, and other is the freshwater, saltwater, that is aquatic. So the oceans, the rivers, the lakes, and seas, all are the aquatic. So now these are the habitat. The habitat where the we are just talking about the expressibility. The human is expressing that he is feeling heat waves. He is going through the drought, and he is going through the floods, and he is going through the cyclones, and he is going through strong winds. He is going through the cloud. But at the same time, the nature, the other animals and other living beings are all going through the same the climate change. So as we already destroyed the mountains, we destroyed the forests, we destroyed the savanna, we destroyed the polars, we destroyed the the oceans, we destroyed the deserts, and every habitat we destroyed. This we interfered in the safe and happy living of the animals. Now, in the process of adopting or adopting or stopping a climate change, now we are looking to build a resilient infrastructure. So how can we do that? What is the what really challenges in front of us? So we are talking about urban areas, we are talking about coastal areas, we are talking about the mountains, we're talking about forest areas. We were talking about flood zone areas, low lying areas. We are talking about the cold places where the people lives, North America and other places. So the challenge is around 71 to 76% of CO2 emissions are from the global final energy use, and represent high concentration of financial infrastructure and human assets and activities that are most vulnerable. So due to the climate impacts. So in coming decades, the hundreds of millions of people in urban areas likely to be affected by rising sea levels. We already seen rising sea levels. So not only just coastal people, due to there are 10 million people are already under the threat, and 90% of the urban areas, if we see, they're all coastal areas. So people, as historian says, our the water is the life, and so uh, the cities are established across the coastal areas. So and in addition to that, the infrastructure and the basic services required for a quality of life in cities also creating climate change, and which is affecting. And in addition to that, economic and social infrastructure and other facilities are located in offices for functioning of the governance and all, and they also affecting. So most affected populations are the urban poor populations, because the richest will live in a good accommodated places where he can use heaters if it is cold, when he can use air conditioning when it is hot. So, but the slum dwellers, the developing nations are mostly affected. So, who really tend to live along the river banks, hillside slopes, and those can be, they can prone to landslides. And the people lives near the nalas and other affected areas. They can, they are polluted grounds and all. So those are very vulnerable people, and those who lives around the slopes and are, they are vulnerable to earthquakes. So um, the waterfronts and coastal areas also more prone to flooding, because the fishery community, most of them lives along the coastal zone. So they are all called urban poor. So these are very vulnerable, and they are more than 1 billion people lives in those settlements across the globe. So that is most important. And despite of these risks, many cities have not yet addressed climate change, because we are talking about climate change, since 20 years, but there is no reasonable address has been done by nations, the parties of the COP 20, whatever the COP. So the reasons include the lack of relevant city policies, action plans, or there is no existence of regulations. Or if there is a regulations or urban planning and nobody is following, and environment is being taken into granted without being put any efforts to change their style of functioning, which has not been adjusted to manage the climate change. They are functioning in a way it is destroying, and nobody is changing their lifestyle to manage the climate change. So, and most of them are slowly responding. If you see the Paris agreement, when the president of USA himself walked away from the meeting. So that means there is no, sometimes there is no response, and some countries they have low response. So due to some, the developed countries and all, there is no reason why they are giving away. But vulnerable countries, lack of capacity and lack of resources, we may have some consideration towards them, but some of them are lack of public awareness, and climate variability and climate change. It induced a hazard mitigation. So hazards are there, but there is no mitigation actions taking place. So that is the most important challenge which we have at this juncture. So um, so the nations are building. They are instead of green, they are going for gray, hard man-made infrastructure, and it needs to be repaired. So making our infrastructure resilient is ever more important as climate change intensifies extreme weathers, and it should be able to communicate with the nature, and it should accommodate the ecosystems, and whereby we can withstand, to learn from the past impact of the climate change, and then adapt to tune to the climate change. So we need to rebuild and improve, the existing infrastructure to and resilient infrastructure which should adapt the climate change, and also stop the climate change is possible by using the nature-based solutions. So and so most of the people are now looking towards the nature-based solutions in the resilient infrastructure. So how to what are the nature-based solutions? So in the coastal storms, the sea level rise and the erosion happens. So how to stop that? And how to stop the extreme heat, how to stop the flooding, how to stop the winds, and how to stop the cold. These are the most important. You may not stop, but how to protect yourself by building a resilient infrastructure. So the infrastructure are often thought of man-made structures and buildings, but it can also include natural systems such as wetlands. Wetlands are the most important systems that emulate the nature, such as green roofs. So now the policy makers should improve on the national infrastructure, and the international community should come forward and fund for the nature-based solution. So the critical, it is critical. We are all in the critical juncture whereby there must be the infrastructure funding for the nature-based solutions, because most of the people will not come forward for nature-based solutions, and no funder will come forward because it is to be revived, and it cannot be permanent. So you have to change as the system changes, as the nature changes, as the climate changes. So that is why so most of the times it is affecting. But now the governments are coming forward to to start working on the nature-based solutions. For example, America, they took a legislation is called Living Shoreline Act 2019, and also the American Transportation Act 2019, and Climate Stewardship Act. So these are all the examples. America is coming up, and other countries also coming up to establish EIS, Environment Protection Act, and other things are getting forward. And the national building codes the country is developing, they are incorporating the resilient green building solutions, as well as the nature-based solutions. But they are not to the required tune. They are not to the to cater the climate change. So the people always think about the cost when we are talking about the nature-based solutions. So you need to employ nature-based solutions to create sustainable climate resilient solutions to the needs of the country, needs of the people, and then needs of the future generations. That is most important. And these nature-based solutions are should be higher quality. They're low cost and more resilient and more beneficial to the society, and for maintaining as well, repairing and replacing a grain, because the old infrastructure which we call about gray infrastructure, it is not resilient, and we have to replace with the green infrastructure. It also costs. So your cost not only to the new infrastructure, it will also add the removal of the gray infrastructure a cost out to us. So therefore the nature-based solutions can actually help the world, help the universe, help the mother earth to effective way substantially the control the climate change, and socially, economically, and environmentally it will give co-benefits. And combining so sometimes what happened, you may not able to remove the gray, but you can also add nature-based solutions to gray infrastructure which you already have, which is called retrofitting. By retrofitting the green into your modeling and all, can actually remodeling the infrastructure of the nations. So this is most important. So how to fix is important. So how can we achieve those targets which are set by the parties? COP is important. So restoring is one. Then the project should now starting thinking about the green energy and green infrastructure, national infrastructure. That is important. And also nature-based solutions for coastal storms and sea level rise and erosion is also important. So the coastal communities are experiencing effect of climate change, drastic climate change, so including sea level rise, more intense storms, flooding, erosion. So this is costing a lot to the nations. So it is to be